Jessica Morgenthau, and I'm here with Resilience Gone Wild and my awesome producer, Kai Sorensen, who, by the way, did one unbelievable job. He always does, but now he set a new bar for these episodes, for the episode that just dropped on Tasmanian devils and that we're here to talk about with Dean Reid. And the soundscape is just incredible. So you got to take a listen to the first part one of this episode, right?
Thank you so much. And this one was a lot of fun. Again, went and did a little bit of research on what is the music of Tasmania, specifically folk music. And there's some elements incorporated to kind of help to bring it there. So appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. And shout out to Aussie Ark, who allowed me to take the sound bites of the devil screaming you can hear at the beginning is from Aussie Ark, and they allowed us to kind of use that audio, which is super fun.
I did not realize that, and I can't wait to throw that back out to Dean Reid and thank him for it myself. And that's who we're here to talk about.
Yeah, speaking of.
Yeah,
so it was a long process of getting a hold of Dean. You would take our listeners a little bit through what that was like.
Yeah, well, honestly, the way we started was it was going to be really cool. Tasmanian Devils was an early episode in the planning because it's just such an amazing concept that they store this reserve of energy in their tails and that
my favorite Looney Tune growing up because of Space Jam.
Right, exactly. And it's been around for a long time, so anybody who's ever followed cartoons knows Taz. And I had early in COVID, when they were starting to release some of the Tasmanian Devils out of Aussie Ark, they had a couple of stars involved in the release. Chris Hemsworth and Zac Efron got involved. And I first reached out, honestly, to get one of them and heard nothing. I don't know if that's called ghosting or
what,
if that's
really?
Just being ignored, but they'll be sorry because we got Dean Reid. So we went, I went for someone who actually really knows what's going on and really has been involved in this amazing process to save the Tasmanian devils. And can you imagine if Taz disappeared? Like, that would be just tragic. So it was a great find and a great conversation, and what a lovely guy. So I'm going to Australia next year, and I just looked up how far it is. It's like a 4.5 hour drive to the sanctuary to meet the real Tasmanian devils at Aussie Ark from Sydney. So I'm hoping to get there, and this was a lot of fun. So yeah, what were your thoughts?
No, I mean, just, of course, editing these interviews is always, sitting in and editing, it's always just so inspiring that, the people we connect with are just such a deep, honest, genuine love and appreciation for what they do. And I think, you'll hear early in the episode, Dean's transition out of not a good situation where he was, and the Tasmanian devil, to his word, saved his life. And I think it's just a really special thing. And you can see it in his smile. Yeah. You can see it in the stories he tells. So again, in the show notes, we're going to include videos to the kind of some of the celebrity stuff that went viral for Aussie Ark. In addition, donations, anything helps Aussie Ark keep their mission alive and thriving. So we'll include some links there. And of course, just a shout out to conservation in general. And it's not just about Tasmanian devils there. So make sure you go check out their website and follow and give them some love on YouTube and all that.
Yeah. And just to go back to something you just said about, the Tasmanian devils kind of saved him, the opportunity to get out of a dark place that he was in. We talked to Phil Richmond about getting out of a dark place and the psychology around that, and upcoming in season 2. So we wanted to throw a few.
Oh yeah, that's right.
A few names, and one of them is going to be Richard Louv, who is the founder, creator, researcher, all who identified nature deficit disorder and the opportunity to turn life in such a more positive direction by connecting with nature and the lack of nature that leads to a real deficit in life and in joy. So that's going to be really cool. We have Richard coming up. We have fermentation in grapes with Marta Mendonca. These are all they haven't been recorded yet. These are all in the pipeline and all have agreed. What else we got? We have a ton.
Well, we'll be rounding out season 1, which is crazy to think that a year ago or so, you and I started connecting about this, and here we are. We'll be rounding out season 1 with Shark Week, of course, one of my favorite animals out there. And so I think
we've
we'll
got an
have
episode on the great white shark, because that was the Jaws. It's the 50th anniversary of the film Jaws.
Do you remember where you were when you saw Jaws for the first time?
I do not. Do you?
Yes, I was in my living room with my sister. We were probably like 7 and 8, and I think it was a VHS tape. We probably weren't old quite. Mom and Dad were probably working. I don't know that, but we got a hold of that tape, and I didn't get through it. I think we turned it off pretty quickly. But later on, I have seen it. And it's a great movie. Actually, something might go watch this weekend, just because I don't know if Lisa's ever seen it. She probably hasn't. So
fun. Yeah, it's a fun movie, and it's quite a bit of the work that Kai and I are doing, and that Resilience on Wild does, which is, and that there, so many people in the community that we live in, that I live in, are trying to redefine the negative stereotypes of species that have gotten a real bad bill from media and from myth, and like, we need to love sharks. And there was an amazing guy who just swam around Martha's Vineyard. And to prove that, and that's where Jaws was filmed, to prove that sharks can, really aren't looking for humans. He said it was a little scary from what I gather in the posts, but that we need to relook at these species that we have denigrated and created just pure fear out of, so that we stop killing them. Like, we stop going after them and deciding that we can dominate them and that we don't care about them. And that's
Which is full circle back to the Tasmanian devil, right? A lot of destigmatizing of the word devil, right?
Yeah.
But quick Martha Stewart story. So like 3 or 4 years ago, my wife and I went to this wonderful restaurant called Goose Feather. It's in Terrytown. And it was like date night. It's like we had a little bit of cash to spend, because that's that kind of restaurant, and just enjoying like this incredible, it's like fusion Asian bar food.
I know it.
Delicious. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, and having a dumpling in my mouth, and I look over, and who's floating? Literally floating through this restaurant is Martha Stewart in an entourage. And I was like, I think we're in the right place if she's just casually hanging here. So, but anyhow, let's hop over. We got an awesome email that I wanted to read from Dan Yessa. Is that his name?
Yeah.
And what's the connection there?
You know what? It's another one of these amazing people that I met on LinkedIn. I honestly have literally thousands of really interesting, cool people, and I've started to be in really deep conversation with quite a few of them, which is very time consuming, but super, super light up time for me, and leads to all kinds of cool things. So Dan and I sent Dan a link and said, to the Indigo episode, which is all about superpowers and not hiding your superpowers because our world needs you. And he listened to the episode, and he wrote this beautiful review on email back. So thank you, on messaging actually. And I so appreciate it, Dan, and looking forward to hopefully getting you on a podcast someday.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to read the email real quick. I hope you're doing great. I just wanted to share that I recently listened to the podcast about indigo, and it was amazing. I absolutely loved it. As luck would have it, I was in my editing studio when I listened, and the sound quality was impeccable. Thank you very much. I'm not typically a podcast fan, but I can say that today I opened my Apple Podcast app for the first time in almost a year. The calm voice, Jessica, the rich storytelling, Jessica, made it a fantastic experience. Everything about it was well done. Thank you for sharing this with me and your kind words of encouragement. I hope it reaches more people and ignites the flames of inspiration in their spirits. Wow. Awesome. What a wonderful message, and what a wonderful reminder that taking a moment to subscribe, to give us a star rating, and to leave a comment is how we play the algorithm game. It's how we get this message to more ears organically, and as we continue to build this resilient nature world. So
and just as a shout out to Dan, and when we look at the map of who listens to our podcast, he's in Uganda and the Congo and the DRC, right? So the colors light up on the map all over the world that we've got a following across the globe, which is just so cool that we're touching
it is fun to see
hearts.
That. Awesome. Okay, well, should we get to the interview?
Yeah.
All right, enjoy, everybody.
Welcome, Dean Reid. I am so excited that you're here from Aussie Ark. Kai and I have been looking for someone to talk to about Tasmanian devils for about 6 months since I wrote the episode about the resilience tool of building up fat in your tails and the fun of a Tasmanian devil that I saw in the back of a car, like the back windshield of a car one day, and thought this has to be a really cool animal to learn about. Welcome. Dean is the operations manager, if I have it right, at Aussie Ark, but tell us more. And we're recording this at, Australia time, New York, Florida time. We found each other at a convergence point, which is great. And thank you so much for making the time to be here. So we really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. It's keeping me inside. It's a cold day up here in the Barrington Top, so I'm inside with a fire on. So thank you for that. But
Nice.
yeah, no, I've been working with animals, I think, for about 14 years now. But historically, I was in customer service, like in bars and clubs in Sydney. And I got to a point in my life
Same
where
thing, right? Tasmanian Devils bar.
Yeah, one animal to the next, as to speak. But I just got over that kind of lifestyle, and I sort of moved to the Central Coast to get away from sort of Sydney and slow my life down a bit. And the Cheyenne Reptile Park was just around the corner from me, and so I thought I could start volunteering there. I was 40 when I started doing this. I'm now 55.
Wow,
Yeah, so
wow,
quite
that is
late.
so important. It's a statement because I started this really late. As I started at like 55, to get really into nature and really like build this as part of this chapter of my life. And like just the message that, you can always dive into at a super deep level and deeply connect with nature when you at any time in your life. And then you just can't change that path. It's just becomes, you're all encompassing, all consuming.
Well, it does. I think, the native wildlife of Australia basically saved my life, I think, is a big tick out of that one, getting out of Sydney and not drinking myself to death. But, so I got into just volunteering to start off with. I was like, oh, how can I help? I always thought that you needed a degree or, a PhD to work with animals. I sort of grew up on a farm when I was very young, so I'm used to being around animals, but I just thought it was out of my realm and out of my reach. I sort of left school at year 10 in Australia, which is quite early, about 15, and went straight into the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just started working hard there. I just volunteered one day a week, and then I picked up another, I started picking up casual stuff because I worked in the customer service world and was very good at talking to people. I started getting casual work very good and very quickly at the tours, kids to keeper program. So, showing all the kids around, and it just slowly progressed. And I applied for a couple of jobs there. My main reason was to go to the reptile park is because I love koalas. Koalas are my first and favorite, and then devils, obviously.
Koalas are like classically cute. I mean,
they are.
But they have them at the reptile park?
Yes, they've got all the mammals there. They call it the reptile park, but they've got 300 other animals there and stuff like that. But my main goal was because I love koalas, I wanted to be able to get close to a koala. And so that started that love. And as time went on, I actually didn't know about devils, which is crazy. In my 40s, I didn't really know about Tasmanian devils at all. The reptile park started breeding devils up at the back of there to save them. So in 2006, when they started seeing the decline of the devil and devil facial tumor disease, Tim Faulkner and John Weigel basically said, how can we help? So they built 23 enclosures up the back and sort of intensively bred. So very small enclosures, one devil per enclosure, a female in one, two males either side. And then when the female becomes receptive, they were putting the male in, and sort of they grew very quickly. So that's how I sort of got involved in the devil. I was sort of looking after them out the back of the reptile park. But they got so big. Yeah, they got so big that they bred so many devils so quickly. They went, well, this is untenable. We have to find something bigger. And then they started building Aussie Ark in 2010 and finished it in 2011. It was called Devil Ark back there, which was only 9 enclosures. We only started off with 44 devils. And most of those come from other zoos in captivity in Tasmania and Australia. So they looked at the genetics and popped those in.
Right, and you were able to start. They were able to start out with devils that weren't carrying the disease. So they were moved from Tasmania to Australia to just start clean to save the population, I guess, right?
That's right. So the Tasmanian Devil Program in Tasmania, which is the Tasmanian government, started breeding in small zoos, and this is how the program started. Obviously, there's not a lot of real estate at small zoos. The reptile park itself only has 10 hectares, and so it was taking up a lot of space out the back. And so they thought they could do better, and they started looking for these big parcels of land. And anywhere between a small enclosure, like 2 meters, well, 4 meters by 4 meters to somewhere bigger, devils will breed. And so they looked at a couple of places. The Packer family, which is one of the biggest families in Australia, had a property up here and heard we were looking for property. It wasn't a property that we were looking at. And they decided to meet with us and say, we've got this 500 hectare parcel that we're happy to sort of give you over the next 100 years under a, $1 lease or something like that.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. So, I mean, there's so much that you just said that's just so powerful and important to the way to thrive as a culture and a community and a society, right? Like, care for those who are in need and do what you can to help but learn about them, right? Like there was this unbelievable level of learning so that they could breed in a healthy way and then care for them, find the amount of space they needed because it wasn't enough and that wasn't fair to them. And then look for generous people, right? Like look for the generosity. And I'm so curious, how do you take the devils that are kind of loose and running around a little wild looking for scavenging, I think, and put them in a massive piece of property like the 500 hectares and then I think it's triple that now, right? Or 5,000. How many do you have?
We got 500 hectares and then we do have other properties, but we haven't enclosed those yet. So, but in that 500 hectares, to start off with, we're only using 35 hectares. So we've now split them up into areas like SRU, which is a species recovery unit. That's where we do all our breeding. So that's just the small, like they're still 2 hectare to 4 hectare yards. They're very big.
Got it.
And we only ever have up to 10 devils in there. In breeding, we only have 8. So 4 males, 4 females. So they've got a lot of room to do their own thing and they do their own thing. We don't intercept, they breed if they want to breed. If they don't want to breed, then they don't breed. And we just, we're just happy with what we get on the other end.
Yeah, it sounds like the numbers work. I'm so curious though, like I was looking up how mothers build these hidden dens. Do they do that in this environment as well, where they've got this space that's safe?
Yeah, so they do. And what we did, because in the wild, they would use anywhere from wombat holes or down logs, or they actually dig their own burrows, but they look for the easy way. They're not like a wombat that can dig a burrow overnight. They take about a week to get to that point. So it's a lot of digging. But when we cleared some of the fences, we're very nature up here and we wanted to keep all the trees, but some fence lines that had to go through those trees that went over, we just piled them up into a pile. So each yard has about 6 different piles and then we dump dirt on top of it. And then the devils dig in there.
You made it easy.
Yeah. But there's also old wombat holes in the yards. There's fallen trees with log hollows and they sort of pull nesting material into there. So they'll find their home. And we've never had to redo them in the 11 or 14 years that we've been operating.
They take good care of their homes.
They
so
do.
I thought, the whole marsupial breeding is so interesting. I mean, what I was learning about the devils, which I think is common. I didn't study other marsupials yet, but I think it's somewhat common, right? Like they might have a different number of joeys, but like we've got, these tiny little blind, like tiny little offspring that are fighting for who can climb up the ladder faster, right? And who can just grab one of the 4 teats faster. Can you describe it? Because I think it's such an amazing, inspiring process.
Well, it comes down to a couple of things. With dasyurids, so I'll just explain what a dasyurid is. Dasyurid is anything that eats meat. So it would have been the Tasmanian tiger, tiger quolls, devils, eastern quolls, and then you go down to your small little dunarts that live in the desert. They sort of mass produce joeys. They have about 20 to 30 joeys, and it's survival of the fittest very early on. So first to the 4 teats. Quolls have 6 teats, so 6 to the teats win, and the rest just fall off and die. They're so small, they're a grain of rice, that, then you can't everyone goes, why can't you hand raise those? But they're just too small. They're like just got a head, 2 front feet, no back legs, and they're like a pink little piece of rice. So yeah, it's crazy, so undeveloped. And then they stay in the pouch till about 5 months until they're fully grown and they latch onto a teat. Whereas koalas and the macropods and koalas and wombats, they only have 1 joey. Koalas only have 1 joey. Macropods, which are kangaroos, small wallabies, they can have 3 joeys in cycle. So 1 in rested development, so sitting there waiting, 1 in pouch and 1 on foot. So drinking on foot, but still in the pouch. And she has 4 teats. So
that's a busy mom.
That's a busy mom. And they have like 3 vaginas, I think, kangaroos. So they can, when times are good, they produce like they just got one Joey after the next Joey. So it's like, the same in our sort of environment, when times are good, when the sun's shining, make hay.
Right. Amazing. I'm curious though. You said that that's the way the carnivores work. How is that? Is there a connect? Do you know what the connection is between that reproduction process and the fact that they're carnivores, not herbivores?
Well, the carnivores are all dasyurid, so they're from the same families. They've evolved from that same probably one particular animal, and so that's their morphology, I guess. Whereas kangaroos have come from another side and are herbivores, and just a breeding process.
Oh, so interesting. It's so funny. Like, you live in this world of marsupials, and we have, if I have it right, the only marsupials in the United States or North America are the possums. Opossum. And we so don't understand the possum. Like, we think they're like some sort of, in general, like, in the suburbs, there's a lot of them, and we kind of undervalue the amazing benefit to our ecosystems of these animals. And we don't really realize how unbelievably cool they are that they're marsupials, right? Like, they're the only one we've got, and we're not paying attention to it. So tell me about possums.
Well, when I first started at the reptile park, I didn't even know that. I thought Australia was the only place that had mammals. Papua New Guinea does too, but we were so you can just think, why is that animal up there? Because we all used to be connected at one point. So that's the remnants of that. Australia's so isolated and it didn't have these big carnivores, except for the Tasmanian tiger and devil, that all these marsupials exploded. Whereas probably in where you're from, you've got bigger carnivores, which probably picked those animals off. So the possum was the only one that survived, or the opossum. Wow. But yeah, they're interesting animals. I have possums in my roof at home. So different possums, but they're the same thing. And I guess, to me, I love possums. To my husband, he hates them. So he's like,
he takes care of the house.
Yeah, get them out of the roof. And we've got such an old house that you can't really board it up. So like it's one of those old cottages. And so, but I've got microbats in the roof as well. So, but I'm for nature. So I'm like, they're fine. But yeah, I presume the same would happen in North America. You know what I mean? They get up in the roofs, they piss, they shit.
I have to say, when I moved into our house, and our kids were babies, and it was a new house that we had bought. It had been built by some builders, but it was a spec house. And so we didn't design it. We didn't know what we were doing. Honestly, we had no idea what we were doing. So we buy this house, and quite soon after, winter comes and we learn about flying squirrels. So flying squirrels probably are like possums. They find a nice warm place if they can get into a house, into the roof. And it turned out they hadn't sealed the dormers well. So there were numerous families in our roof, and you could hear them like running around above us, and they had no fear of humans. So they were running down the staircase and flying around the rafters, and there's squirrels that just have kind of web feet so they can leap really far. I grew up in New York City, like completely freaked out. It was honestly a nightmare. Like, I can see how your husband like has a problem with this. Like, it's freakish, and you don't know if they're dangerous, if they're going to carry disease, and I don't know. But we need to learn more about it so we can live right? Because it is an old house, or it's like we live in the country, and we need to live with nature, not against it.
And as you said, with nature, there's a couple of things you can do. First off is build possum or little nest boxes for your squirrels and put them in your trees around the house. That much prefer to go in there than in your house. And once they've relocated, you can like fill all the holes up that you need to. It's just working with nature. Why are they coming into the house? Because we destroy their environment. We chop down their old growth trees where they go into the little hollows, and it takes 80 years for a hollow to form. So, we've got to think about, okay, why are they doing that? That's because we've created that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So that's wild. Yeah.
But,
so
back to possums, they only have one baby. So they've only got two teats and they alternate. But they were introduced into New Zealand. I don't know if you know that. And they're a real problem over there because they eat eggs and things. So all their flightless birds don't have a hope. So I know that they're trying to eradicate them over there, but they, yes, possums are very good breeders.
It's such an interesting country. You didn't know you had mammals because there's it's all birds and fish, right? It's marine and birds, and many of them were flightless because they didn't need to fly to get away from predators, right? Like it was like it's a whole it's a crazy different ecosystem or multiple ecosystems. You want to talk about that a little? Because it's really interesting.
Well, I think New Zealand was the last, like one of them, the last continents to sort of pop up. Do you know what I mean? It's very new. And so carnivores and things like that never got over there. Birds got there, and then obviously there's no predators, so they become flightless, and lizards and things like that float over on rafts and things like that and survive and start breeding. So, and the tuatara, which is like a very ancient lizard that has like a third eye on its head, is like a dinosaur basically over there. So, yeah.
Why don't we know about that? As a really cool sounding animal. Why do we not talk about the tuatara with the third eye? Like that seems like such a spiritual thing with the third eye of the.
It's like I think it's a light sensor, but they say it's a third eye, so it can see like birds or prey coming across the head and things like that. But yeah, New Zealand has a very exquisite ecosystem, and you've got these, the kiwi bird, this flightless bird, and the kakapoa, amazing birds species, and we introduced these things like possums back in the day that you didn't really know, like in the 1900s, where you think, oh, we'll just introduce this because it's good for sport and hunting. It really wrecks an ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, that happened with the tortoises, with the rats and the goats. And like, it's unbelievable what's happened to these isolated lands, islands and larger that there's no predators. And then all of a sudden there are, and it destroys the entire ecosystem. So thank you for what you're doing.
With the Tasmanian devil in the program, they started looking at islands around Tasmania they could put devils on, and Mariah Island was one of them, which is a lovely island, but it has a colony of little fairy penguins and also geese. And they thought, they might have a little bit of impact, but basically I think the devil absolutely wiped out the little penguins because they go foraging on the ground and they eat them and they eat the eggs. And so, to save the Tasmanian devil, fairy penguins are abundant, so they're not threatened. That's the same story, Jamie, introducing a predator that wasn't there before.
Yeah. Wow. So I'm thrilled to say that we do have tentative plans to go to Australia and New Zealand, not this December, but in 2026.
Nice.
And I saw on your website that you can actually stay in this beautiful property that the Packers gave you, that there's some like Airbnbs or something there so that I can get to meet the devil. So tell us about that.
Definitely. So obviously we're a charity. So going back a little bit, the reptile park started Aussie Ark. After a few years, we got so big and the money all was coming from the reptile park, their aging facility. They had to look at their own structures and start upgrading the reptile park. So we decided to become a charity. So we fundraise all our own money now. It's a big job. We always are very tight on the ground with staff. I've got about 5 or 6 staff on ground looking after 700 animals. It's a big job.
And some massive amount of acreage.
Yes, and some massive. We get storms and trees down. We've got to fix fences. You just got to be, as you say, resilient, and you've got to do everything. You got to be able to. We're an hour and a half away from the main town. We're 150 meters above sea level, and we get these snowstorms. We get massive storms. So we've got to really look after ourselves. We're very connected to everyone up here on the mountain. I probably know everyone and every family along the road going back down, and you have to. Yeah, because they're your neighbours and they're the people who are going to get you out of trouble when, something hits the fan.
Right. So what was their view when you started raising devils in their backyards?
There was a lot of, we have Diane who she's, I think 77 now. She does 1 day a week, but she was brought on basically because she knew she was born up on the mountain. So we employed her to sort of invite all the farmers to come around and educate them and, come and have a look at what we're doing, because there was a little bit of animosity of us being up here. Before the devils even got here, we got a phone call saying, I've seen a devil eating a sheep. That's impossible because they're not even arrived yet. So you get that kind of thing. And once, it's taken 15, it hasn't taken 15 years, but 15 years now up here, we are very well loved. We bring a lot of recognition to the area, which then gets roads sort of done and things like that, which we're dirt roads all the way up here, and they're starting to work on roads now. The council in Scone are very pro us and Gloucester and Singleton and Muswellbrook, we're in the Upper Hunter. We bring a lot of tourism in. So people come here weekend. We're open in January, all of January, and it's a cheaper rate for families to come up. And we do 2 tours a day, every day, and 1 hour tours. And that's just to show the kids, and that's to get the kids involved. And, they're the next conservationists of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but we have accommodation up here as part of that fundraising, and we have 2 houses. One's a massive house and one's like a little rustic old cottage. And then we do like Devils in the Wild tour where 20 people from all, like, they just drive up the day. They can do tours. And yeah, so that's sort of our income for those areas. But we actually have a head office also down on the Central Coast where we have a fundraising manager who goes to big corporates and marketing. We're very huge on marketing because, that brings the dollar in to keep Aussie Ark going. And as you were talking about resilience before, and I don't know if we've touched on the devil and their tail.
And their tail. We need to talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, how they store fat in their tail. They eat 40% of their body weight because they never know when they're going to get food. It's the same for us, really. We have to be years in advance to know that we've got that money sitting in there for us to keep going. So we've got marketing people going out, doing amazing stories, some great corporate sponsors that are on board. And we're always trying to be that fat tail 3 years in advance to make sure that we can function.
Which is incredible because that is not the norm for a nature organization or a nonprofit. Like it seems like it's always just from what I've heard, like so often it's hand to mouth. There's so much that they want to get done that every dollar that comes in gets, has a place and it gets spent. And the hope is that the next year they'll be able to raise enough money.
Yeah.
But resilience is having the reserves, right? Like the fact that you guys have 3 years worth of fat in the tail is just brilliant. So that's good management. That's good leadership, right?
Yeah. Tim, Liz and Haley and John who are at the reptile park. So they work for, Tim's the director. John Weigel owns the reptile park. Tim's director and they're slowly buying into it. And so is Liz, and Haley is the curatorial side of it. But they work for nothing for Aussie Ark. They've got their job at the reptile park, and then under that, they're doing stuff for Aussie Ark as well. So they're always they run it like a business. Reptile parks run like a business. Aussie Arks run like a business. And we have 800 animals, so you cannot have money there and not be able to feed animals. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where they're
you never know what can happen.
Yeah, where, they can't go anywhere. The food doesn't come to them. We got to bring the food to them, except for our big enclosure, which, there's more enough animals in there to sort of do their own thing. But yeah, it's a fine balance. And I think management have done really well to keep us in good stead. And we have we've got all these plans. We've got an out plan. We've got money set aside just in case things do go horribly wrong and we've got to shut down. There's all those things in place.
Well, in the middle of this, you had COVID, right? COVID hits. You've got your facility, and I just know that I saw a video of Chris Hemsworth and his wife. So connecting with some voices that have some ability to amplify and share and get some publicity, I imagine is an important aspect of the marketing effort as well.
Oh, definitely. Like Chris Hemsworth we went viral and around the world with that. Do you know what I mean? So it's very, he's a very lovely man, and he's for animals and does what he can. So we've, when we can get those things, we love having them, and we'll do anything to get that person up here. Obviously, it's very hard to do that. Do you know what I mean? Everyone's very busy, trying to get those big names up here.
There's a million causes, right? There's a million strings. I saw the Zac Efron show like a year ago that he was up there also. I think was he up there with you where it was?
He was up with Tim actually.
During COVID.
Yeah. They were filming their series on Netflix. And came through, and we do get a lot of stuff. Everyone seems to come to us, which is we have the largest population of devils on mainland Australia, which is 200. We know the devil really well, so we do get big companies coming to us like Nat Geo wanting to do stories, and that's a fundraiser for us as well. You know what I mean? I think we're next
Fund, Friend, and everything else. Yeah.
In September, we're doing a whole story on devils for a month, and that's a lot of time. It's got to have our staff to be with film crew to make sure that they're not getting, attacked by a devil, safety reasons, making sure gates are shut. Obviously, we don't want devils. If someone doesn't shut a gate and we got male and female mixing, then that's a whole horrible story. We don't want breeding because genetics are looked at very closely for the devil. We pick the best genetics just to keep that line going. So,
It reminds me of, I was in Iceland handful of years ago, and getting National Geographic in to invest a month in a project is quite the coup, as you said. And there's an extinct volcano, and they built the only access that you could go down in an elevator into a volcano and see what's like inside a volcano with like all the incredible color of the rock and everything else. So, and that was only because National Geographic, wanted to do a series or a film on that volcano. And now it's been, a real coup for Iceland to have that as a tourist spot and to have that access to something so unique. So I imagine that's awesome that you're going to have something, pretty special that comes out of they're spending a month with you.
Yeah, well, there's only one place in Australia you can really do it. You can't even go to Tasmania and do that kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? So there's not many devils left in the wild, and trying to get a wild devil to come in is quite hard, where we have plenty and we know how they act, and we can, make it look however they want it to look. So
right, exactly. So in Tasmania, where they've been dealing with this horrible, Tasmanian cancer, have dwindled to very few? Is that...
They reckon in 1996 there was around about 350 to 400,000 devils, and we're probably down to 8,000 devils in the wild now.
Wow, and they all died at torturous.
Yeah, if it's gone from the east over to the west, so northeast, and it's just it's spread right across. And where it slowed down was there's a mountain range on the west into really clean, fresh habitat. It slowed down a little bit. Devils can travel, especially males, and they're the ones that sort of transmit it because they're aggressive when they're feeding, when they're getting a mate, they bite the female. So if they've got a tumor on their face and they've got a viral load 1,000 in their mouth in saliva and they bite and pierce the skin, it's transferred straight away. So it's now just crossed over that mountain ridge and it's in the clean population of devils. So, they say it's a 50-year project. It will go through the population like wildfire. And that's what Aussie Ark is really important to do, is to hold that genetic wild diversity. And there's 37 other zoos involved, but they probably have, 5 or 6 devils at the max.
I think there's some in the States. I think the San Diego Zoo has some and a few other ones in the States.
They're mainly, we just sent 20 back to Tasmania to go to other zoos. So some went to Toledo Zoo, some went to Prague Zoo, some are going to Singapore and San Diego, I think. But they're more... They don't breed over there. The only country that's allowed to breed is Norway, which is it Denmark, which is Queen Mary, because she's a Tasmanian.
Yeah, somebody just told me that there's they were given as a gift and a long time ago, and that there's a real population there.
Yeah, and the rest around the world are just ambassador devils because people really don't know what they look like and what they are. So, for instance, Looney Tunes has this devil spinning around. It's not even the right color. And so where that came from was they went to Tasmania back in the day, which would have been in the 1900s, and the enclosures used to be very small, so like a little box. And that is a devil spinning around or going around and around is stereotypical behavior. So
oh,
that's
my God.
They got spinning.
You mean when they're under stress?
Yeah.
It's like the pace, like an animal that's pacing in a small cage, like they're spinning out of stress.
Yeah, they're just turning. They're basically, because the yards are so small, they're just going around in a circle, which looks like they're spinning. So that's where that sort of come from.
Wow. Tell us more about the connection between Taz and how that even started. Like, I don't think anybody even knows there's a real Tasmanian devil that's an animal. Like, it's just been a Looney Tune character for 50 or 60 or 70 years or something like that. Like,
yeah, so it's come from the guy who did Looney Tunes and saw a devil and put that in because it's such a cool creature and has probably never seen it before, and people not really knowing that it's probably a real devil, a real animal. And before I started, I didn't really know so we didn't really advertise devils that well back 15 years ago. Now it's getting a lot better. We're sending, Tasmanian government is sending devils out all around Australia. So people have a real love for them because they are a beautiful animal and they're very, they have this persona that people get wrong, like aggressive animal. Yeah, they can bite. They've got big teeth, but they're like a little dog. They run around. I can go into a yard. If I don't have food in my hand, I can walk around the yard. They'll come up and sniff your boot and walk away.
It's all about the food. It's all about refilling the fat in their tail. Otherwise, there's no reason to be aggressive. And you're not a potential mate. I assume they can tell the difference.
Oh, I hope so.
So do you guys have a relationship, or is somebody creating one between real Tasmanian devils and Looney Tunes? That would that could be a real
Yeah,
lucrative
we've
fundraiser.
marketing have I think looked into it before, but I don't think it's very. We've done a couple of interesting things to try and get the devil out there. We've worked with one of our, like it would be your Costco over there or something, like our Coles, our
Yeah.
supermarkets,
Wow.
to get the devil and all our native animals onto tissue boxes, and every tissue,
Right.
every
Yeah. I
box
have
of-
those tissue boxes.
yeah, we get 5 cents. So things like that. We
Nice.
try and, we're always trying to think outside the box and trying to get more obviously charity money in, and to work with those kind of things is amazing.
Oh, that's so clever.
I don't think they've
Wow.
ever looked at the whole Looney Tune side of it.
It's so funny that it's still a popular character in like the next generation of children's lives. They've kept it going. It's such an entertaining, unique character that makes you laugh. So it's sort of a funny thing because they're not really funny animals, are they? Like, do you find yourself laughing or?
Oh, they can do some silly things. Yeah, like I've hand raised, I think about 40 devils in my lifetime. So I've had them as babies at home, and they run around and they're little kleptomaniacs. So they'll steal everything. If you've got a pair of jocks or a remote control, they'll steal it and hide it under the couch.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they get this little cheeky. They love play when they're young, and so they're running around and their tail's up with a little question mark, so it curls over. It means they're into trouble and they're into something.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Just to be able to spend enough time, and I talk about this all the time in my podcast, that if you spend 5 minutes with them, you kind of see them just as they are, right? The factual, what they look like. And then you spend 20 minutes with them and you might get to see them with the question mark tail and being clever and being devils. And it's just
cheeky little monkeys.
yeah. But the amount of time that you spend with them, like you've got this unbelievable awareness of their behavior and what's going on in their minds. What's going on in their minds? Like, what do you think? Do you ever think about that?
I think their whole mind is they like to sunbake during the day, and they'll spread out and get their.
They just literally enjoy being in the sun.
They love it. Yep. They love water. So anywhere there's a water, they'll be like, even if it's a muddy, like in the heat of the day, they'll come and splay out in the water and roll around in the mud. They're very clean animals. They'll be cleaning themselves all the time. So it's mainly food, reproduction, those kind of things, which is a devil's mind.
But it's not really protection. Like they're not worried about safety. So they're not spending their time worrying about hiding, right?
No. So devils, like a cohort of devils, we keep 5 or 10 males in a yard. And so when you bring them up together and they haven't been inbreeding, they live together very, very well. They have all these cues. So they've got about 14 different vocalizations. When they come into food, we can only hear about 4 or 5 of them. And so they've got these social cues. When they come into food, they'll sniff. And so they'll clear out their nasal passage to get new scent in. But it also works as de-escalating tension. When food's low and they start fighting, they'll bridge. So their front feet come together, they stand up, their faces are together, their whiskers are touching, they're growling, and it looks like they're about to punch on, but then that de-escalates the situation. When a devil comes up to you and I'm in a yard and they're going, arf, arf, that's more of a curious, like, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? I'm curious of what you're doing. When they do a jaw slap, it's like, oh, they're nervous. They're like, I don't like this situation. So can you please move away? And then you've got the guttural scream, which is, hey, I'm coming in full tilt boogie.
Get out of the way.
Get out of the way. But yeah, and then they have all this infrasound that we can't hear.
How do you know that it exists? Have you?
So Kelly Kelly, who worked for us for 6 years when I was here in 2013. So I've been back and forward through, here in the reptile park. So, I did 2013 to 16, went back to the reptile park and was head keeper there for 2016 to 2000. I've been back 3 years as operations manager. So back and forward. She was a volunteer at the reptile park. She was doing a master's on devil behavior and used to come up and set recordings. So one of the interesting things about that was that we always used to say there was a hierarchy in the devil, but there's actually not. The hungriest devil will come in and get food when it needs food. So, you might get an aggressive devil, but he's not top of the run. If a devil's hungry enough, he'll scare another devil off. But
wow, so there's not a hierarchy. When you have those like 6 males in the same group, they're not playing any games like that.
No. If you're hungry, you're gonna have to like punch your way in to get food.
Same thing with mating. Like if you want that female, she'll.
Yeah. So basically in the breeding yards, we set it up as we try and give it what it is in the wild. So there's a 5-year-old male, 4-year-old, 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old. 2 years old is when they first become sexually mature. And then we do a two twos, a 3 and a 4-year-old female. They don't breed typically at 5. You know, they might have one joey here or there, but it's sort of they're done.
How long do they live?
To 6 or 7, not very long.
That's it. Oh, okay.
Yeah. In the wild, probably 5 or 6. In captivity, we have them up to about 7 years old. And then, so you're giving that whole picture of what would be in the wild. Your young devils are a bit more timid. You've got your older males breeding, but they're probably teaching the males how it all works and how it all goes down.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so in the wild, just another little interesting thing, in the wild, you'll have multiple entry dens. The female will go into estrus, which is in late February. Then she has a month off. Then it's May. Then she has another month off. Then she can go June, July. So if she doesn't get pregnant the first time, she'll go through 2 other estruses.
Oh, but she stops for a month and like recoups and.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, so she'll go into 4-day comatose state. So she gets flooded with all these hormones. She becomes very receptive. The male will come in and breed with her. After 4 days, she'll kick him out. So he'll then guard the den out the front. But another male can come in from another entrance and breed with her.
Wow.
And she can actually sire multi-litter sires. So 2 to one male and 2 to another male.
I just heard about it. I mean, I know that turtles do that. They like store bags of sperm from different donors and different mates. But I saw somebody showed me their 2 dogs that were born in a litter. They were so unbelievably different. And she said that dogs do that. And I guess there's a relation, anatomically between devils and dogs. Like it's a mammal that's in some ways similar. Is that kind of what's going on there?
Probably a lot of animals do it, and we don't really know that they do it because we haven't, genetically tested their offspring, because you don't because they're in the wild. Yeah. So I would say, a few different species do that kind of thing.
That's awesome. Okay, so tell me if you can, like, you gave a couple of funny stories. You had another funny story about an interaction with the devil that I just love the funny stories because I want people to really appreciate what happens when you have a relationship that's respectful in nature with another species, that what can come out of that comes from really, having a deep connection. You got a story about some devil that you had a really deep connection with that did something interesting or funny or something.
My most connection I've had, and I've hand raised a few devils, but I've had a really big connection with a female called Diva. And she just really bonded to me. And normally a devil, when you stop handling them, they'll revert back because they've got a tiny brain. They revert back to wild. So after about 1.5 years, we stopped using our devils for tours and things like that. And it's just knowing the animal. Do you know what I mean? I'm always watching the animal. I know how they react. And at some point, if someone patting a devil on the back of the head is a dominant thing, because the males bite the females on the back of the neck to drag them in. Oh. So you know the cues. So when for instance, just recently we stopped using one of our females that I hand raised, just because she started going, opening her mouth and not really doing anything, but the mouth opening is like, oh, I don't really like that. So we stopped using her, because you never know. They are a wild animal. They can turn around and give you a little bite, and they can do a lot of damage. But Diva, we put her into breeding, and she had joeys, and she'd still come up to me while I was doing my rounds. And if I was at the water bowl, and she would just sit there and lie there. I wouldn't pick her up because she had joeys, but she would just lay out and come up to me and still go, hey, I know you. And that was still about 5 years old. That devil would still do that. Obviously, when you don't interact with them every day, I wouldn't pick her up because she could just turn around and bite you. And they do have a very strong jaw pressure. But just to sit there near the fence, her to come up and just lay down and sunbake in front of you and just say, hey, I'm here with you. And just to have that bond with an animal was pretty special.
Wow. So they raise their joeys and train and teach them, and then they sort of separate. Do you think that over time, it's been quite a few years already, but over time they are getting more and more used to humans and are building a different relationship or in this environment, or is that just an anomaly and Diva is just a really special?
I think that's an anomaly. Like other devils will come up. As still a female from 2 years ago that she'll come up and sniff, but if I put my hand near the thing, she'll try and lunge for you. So I don't know. I think it's an anomaly. Like we do change the behavior of the devil when we work in a small area with devils. So we've got 200 devils in a small environment. You're walking past them, although it's 35 hectares, that's small to a devil, large to us. But,
right.
You're driving your car, we've got little Can-Ams. We're driving those around. You've got food in the back. They can smell it. They're sort of like, we change food around in different yards because they get used to it. They know when the food's coming. They can smell it from 2 kilometers
And you're
away.
trying to avoid that. Like
And
you
you're
want them
trying
to
to
live
avoid
wild,
that.
right?
You do change, for instance, we've got 3 boy yards we use for tours. Now we feed those during the day and they come out during the day, but breeders, we don't. So you never see them. And then the other devils that are like breeders, you just never see, which is really weird. So it's all different things happening in different areas, very close together. But the breeders you never see. The yards that you hold multiple males and females, they'll come out. The females are a bit more quiet. The males will come out and feed whenever you put food out. In the wild, that wouldn't happen. You just wouldn't see a devil.
Right. They know better. But why do they know better since they don't have predators? Why are they shy?
Just a human. It's just their nature. Human walking past. Oh, it's a noise. I got to run. Do you know what I mean? It's just innate. They got tiny little brains. For instance, one of the things is they don't, you might feed them every day, but they're like, I've got to eat. I've got to eat 40% of my body. So you got to be really careful because devils can get fat very quickly. So we only feed 400 grams per devil per day. But if you got 10 devils, that's 4 kilos. Sometimes you'll get a heavier devil. We might have to pull out and put him on a little diet. But usually they work it out. They've got a lot of area. They run around all night. They work, they keep themselves nice and svelte.
You've been so generous with your time, and I know you've got a day's work ahead of you. So I appreciate that you're doing this conversation. But like, what were you blown away by that you were like, wow, they do that?
That they're a very clean animal. They have a lot of tolerance for people, but just watching them, they'll sit up after their food, after they've eaten, after they've gone into like a bloody gutty carcass of an animal.
Yeah. They're scavengers, so they're not eating neat food. Yeah.
But they'll sit there and sit up like a meerkat and lick their paws and clean their face.
Wow.
And their little hands are like our hands, and they use those hands like they get the fur off, they get the meat off. They'll use it to hold meat while they're eating. Just those little things, just to how human-like that they can be sometimes, where they've got like a hand like us. They've got 5 digits, and they use them like that too.
Wow. Can they hold things? They don't have they have an opposable thumb that they can grab?
Oh, they can pick up meat and eat it. Yeah.
Wow.
More of a claw, not like a full thumb, but yeah, they can.
But they can hold something.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And they run off with everything. So if you're a film crew and you're sitting there, I might never leave anything on the ground, guys. I've seen devils run off with GoPros and things like that, and you never get it back.
Where do they put them? They're burying them?
They just go down in the hole and they probably stay there.
That is so funny. Can you imagine if you ever dug up one of those holes to see what they've found in there?
We've lost it. We've put some camera traps up just to see devil behavior, and you have to put them up high. And I've had a couple of staff put them down low, and they've just taken them off the fence, and you've never seen them again. They're $500 camera gone.
That is awesome. It's so cool. Okay, so wrap it up. Tell us what we can do to help Aussie Ark, to help you, to help the animals like them that are suffering from odd, things that are impacting their population that aren't necessarily human connected. I mean, this is a very different story of a threatened animal than unless it comes from the environment.
It's a two-pronged one, so I'll go with Aussie Ark first. Obviously, we're a charity, and if you ever want to come and see us, hop onto our website, which is aussieark.org.au. See the amazing work we do and all the beautiful animals, because we don't
It's a beautiful website too, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, we don't just do animals at Aussie Ark. We have Conservation Ark, which is part of Aussie Ark, but we're off-grid up here, so anything that needs power, like turtles, snakes, the broadtooth rat, are all kept down there. So we've got about 15 different species, and that takes a lot of money. So if anybody wants to jump online, donate a little bit of money, doesn't have to be much, come and see us, go on a tour, stay at our accommodation. That would really help out. Spread the word.
Give us a location. How far are you from where someone might be visiting?
So we're about 5 hours from Sydney. So you would fly into Sydney, you could stay on the Central Coast, which is about 3 hours away from us, or you can go to Newcastle, or you can fly into Newcastle, and we're 2 hours. So not too far away. It's like a bit of a day trip. If you stay here, you stay a couple of days usually, but there's plenty to do around this amazing countryside. And the other one would be to do grassroots stuff, is look where you live, get involved with your local community. I don't know, if you have frogs there, build a little frog pond out in your garden. If you've got a bit of land, put up a nest box for your opossums or birds or squirrels, looking into what you can do to help, which doesn't cost a lot of money, but, gives a lot of reward to animals.
Yeah. And I always say, pay attention, just be in their space without bothering them. But like, if you create a pond or a nest box or something that will draw nature to your location, and then you could just sit and watch.
Yeah.
And
It's
not
amazing.
interfere, but like watch. It's unbelievable. Like words of wisdom. What you came into this from, like, started in farming and raised in a farm, and then left for decades, and then went back. Like, what was the experience like to suddenly change your focus? You said it saved you.
Yeah, it saved me.
What can we offer people that like give inspiration to like just take on nature as a love?
I think you have to stop and look at nature sometimes, because that is very holistic, as in, okay, how do they do it? Do you know, they're not burnt, like they're not exhausting their resources.
Mm-hmm.
We've become a very materialistic world. Unfortunately, you got to have the latest iPhone, you got to have the latest furniture. Do we need to? And that's just, can we lobby that? Unfortunately, it's our society that builds that, and it's companies and corporations that do that, because, I had a fridge that my dad had and still has 50 years later that still works. These days, it just doesn't work, and it's all built into making money. So I don't know. It's a tough one, and I think we're getting better with it as a world, because we've only got finite resources.
Yeah. Hopefully, we'll learn it before we destroy it. And to your point, I think such a important.
Sorry, the good thing about that is that even if we do destroy it and we go,
it'll stay. It'll be back.
The world will recover at some point.
Yeah.
And there'll be just a different form of it.
I say it all the time, like, something like, 99.99 whatever % of nature, of animals have gone extinct. Yeah. The rest of them will still be here. We won't. We're like the odds of us surviving are the slim one.
Yes, which might be better for the world.
which might be better for the world. But in the meantime, we're trying to do something good to help it out.
No, thank you. And every little bit helps. So thank you for having me. That was amazing.
Yeah, that was fun. And thank you for being like the representative of the Tasmanian devil. It was an animal we were very excited to share. So
my pleasure. Anytime.
This has been a production of BLI Studios, produced by me, Kai. Follow along with our other BLI produced shows at balancinglifesissues.com/podcast-BLI. Got an idea for the show? Email me, Kai, at balancinglifesissues.com. And don't forget to stay in touch with your host, Jessica, at jessica@winwinwinmindset.com. Anything else to add, Miles?
Yeah.